Yeah, I actually discovered Julius Erving. I got him started in basketball. See, he's from Long Island, and he was in a band with me and played the bass. And, you know, you wouldn't think it, but the guy had absolutely no rhythm at all. Terrible.
He's a gentleman, you know, but when I first met him, Julius was working in a small club in Long Island as a comedian under his real name, which is Erwin Lippenstein. Did you know that?
Okay, we all know that he went on to play basketball. No offense to Billy and Billy, but we did some of our own digging into Dr. J's beginning and found out that there was a 9-pound, 8-ounce baby boy born February 22nd, 1950, who the nurses called Pork Chop. Julius Winfield Erving was a quiet, obedient kid, second in a family of 3 children growing up in Long Island. His parents were separated, and Julius was only 9 when his father passed away. His mother had to work hard to support and raise her children.
I'm not going to say that we were poor because we had health. Financially, I would say maybe we were. But we had a lot that a lot of the rich people didn't have, and that was togetherness and love.
Unfortunately, that Erving family togetherness, which Julius knew as a child, is now only shared between him and his mother. His sister Alexis, who was 3 years older, died in 1984 of cancer. Marvin, who was 3 years younger than his brother, died of lupus when Julius was a freshman in college. His mother says as a child, Julius talked of being a basketball player and also a cop. He says he also had other dreams.
I said early someday that I would win the Pulitzer Prize as a kid, and that I would have money, fame, and I would have a family that I was proud of.
I'm glad that he did choose something that could make him be somebody.
She didn't expect him to become the superstar of whom she's so proud. And to her, he's still just Julius Erving, her son.
People make more of it than I do, really, because I still look at him as he says, Junior. He don't like me to say that, you know, because he laughed, you know, but then he don't like me to say Dr. J.
Around 9th grade, this buddy who I used to play with, he started calling me the doctor, because I called him the professor. And the reason I was calling him the professor is more of a story to his nickname than to mine, because I call him the professor because he used to lecture to all the kids, and he was a very talkative guy, very persuasive. And he reminded me of a high school or college professor, and I called him the professor, and I would do it, and he just kind of reciprocated and gave me a nickname. He said, well, if I'm the professor, you be the doctor.
A longtime friend says there's more to that story.
The parents and grandparents were disappointed because they always wanted him to be a doctor. So even though he was a comic for a while and then, you know, playing as a musician, they refused to acknowledge that. And they said, no, you're a doctor. You know, what Jewish son should not be a doctor?
Julius attended school in Roosevelt, New York. It should come as no surprise that he was popular and stayed out of trouble.
He was an excellent student. He was a quiet boy. He did all his work. He's the kind of a student you enjoy having in class, a student you could, let's say, laugh with.
Early in my early years, followed more than led, although I was very careful where I would follow people to. You know, going into smoking and drinking or hanging out and things like that, which, you know, kids experience. You know, I became more of a loner and try to stay away from things that would be counterproductive to my development as a student and as an athlete.
His high school coach was Ray Wilson, a father figure to Julius, who 3 years ago became his business manager.
I really didn't know how good Julius was going to be. I thought he was going to be a very good high school player, but I certainly didn't think that 10 years from that point he'd be a professional player that the whole country or maybe the whole world was talking about. Julius was pretty heavily recruited. I think Julius had a sense of control in the sense of what he wanted from a college or what he was looking for, so that there were many schools eliminated.
Julius chose to become a business major at the University of Massachusetts. In his sophomore year, he was joined by Ray Wilson, who became an assistant coach under his old college teammate, Jack Lehman.
He was like a young colt. He had long, thin legs, long, thin arms. He had the greatest pair of hands I ever saw in my life.
Entering college standing 6'3½", Julius was projected as a guard. But after 24 rebounds in his first game, he was moved to forward.
He learned the game as a small player, as a guard, small forward, and then grew into a big player, 6'6", 6'6½". And he had all the skills that he had to have.
He just called a touch foul. They rip off our arm. Come on.
Although he coached the women at UMass this year, Lehman remembers one young man so special to him.
He was probably the most team-oriented player I ever coached. The one thing that we tried to do was make him be even more flamboyant than he was.
Following Julius to Massachusetts was Al Skinner, who later became his teammate in the ABA and NBA.
When we was first starting out, he was kind of lazy because he just laid in bed and all he did was prepare for the games.
Oh, but was he ready? And so were the thousands of people who lined up outside this gym hours before each of Julius Erving's games.
Although he was probably the greatest athlete to ever play at the University of Massachusetts, he was probably the most popular young man to ever go to school there also. I mean, I know that he went to school with hundreds and hundreds of people who did not know he was a great athlete.
After his junior year, Julius postponed the classroom in favor of the pros, leaving a college career in which he averaged over 26 points and 20 rebounds a game in 2 varsity seasons. Though they still see each other from time to time, like they did after Julius' final game in Boston, Lehman will never forget the phone call 16 years ago when he heard that Julius was no longer his player.
And I asked a few things like, did the gym burn down? Did anybody flunk out of school? Did my wife leave? And I remember him saying, no, worse than that. And I said, oh, my Lord, what could be worse than that? He said, I think Julius is leaving. Well, I caught the next plane back, and we talked a lot about it, and it certainly was the right decision for him at the time.
I didn't really love the idea of him coming out of school that last year, but that was a promise he had made, too. He says, I'm going to try it. He said, because really I have learned in school what I really need now.
Julius fulfilled that promise to himself and his mother recently when he earned his business degree from the University of Massachusetts. Signing a 4-year, $500,000 contract with the Virginia Squires, the doctor became Dr. J. After leading the league in scoring his second year, Julius was sold to the New York Nets.
I became more of a leader of the team, had more responsibilities as captain, more strategic responsibilities, became a little more complete. My confidence reached a height where I felt on a basketball court I can do any and everything that I've seen anybody else do, and still add a few new twists that were mine on my own.
Dr. J also had a style and appearance all his own.
He's very conscious of his big front, so he spent a lot of minutes in the mirror, tackling up, trying to get it together, get it in line, and we go out on the court and get all wild and fuzzy, but at that time he didn't care. But he's probably a little more vain than people would realize, even though I guess he's overcome that a little bit because he hasn't been using a Grecian lately.
In 3 seasons as a Net, the Doctor won 3 MVP awards and led the team to championships in 1974 and 76.
Now it is Doctor with the ball. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Gets it off. It is gone!
Last year, the ABA, when we won the championship, our second championship, I thought he put in his final year as any basketball player's ever played.
When we return, we'll look at how Julius Erving came to Philadelphia and instantly became one of us.
Dr. J, the man's a legend. One of a kind. God bless him.
That does it for today's adventure. If you're new here, please subscribe. Take it one step further and ring that notification bell. And if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a big old like and a thumbs up. It lets me know you care. I'll see you in the next video. Ride on.